Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair. Today we're going to be checking out our first vintage on the channel, which is a brand. They make kind of Gibson clones as well as some other stuff. This is the V100 in Tobacco Sunburst. Let's take a look. Alright, I used to own one of these a really long time ago, and I remember it being very, very good. But this is like maybe 10 years ago I had one. So I saw one pop up locally, and the price was very good, so I went and picked it up. So these are pretty cool guitars. These are designed by Trev Wilkinson. So Trev Wilkinson is a pretty legendary designer. He's known for his pretty inexpensive pickups and parts, but they're also being very high quality, among other things. So this is kind of his take on a guitar. I guess the whole thing is it's less money, but with a lot of the nice high-end features as like a Gibson. So yeah, this one has a maple top. So this one's a kind of a plain maple top, but it's got a really nice green pattern on there. It looks really good. Very nice, kind of a plainer maple top. It's got a mahogany body. Looks like they used a really nice piece of mahogany for this. It's actually two pieces. I see there is one seam line here. So this is a two-piece mahogany body, a one-piece mahogany neck, which is nice. And it is truly one piece. There's no scarf join on these necks, so it's just a nice one-piece mahogany neck. And they've got some Wilkinson tuners on here, which are kind of look like those old Kluson Deluxe tulip tuners with the green ends. And it's got Wilkinson tailpiece, a Wilkinson tune-o-matic bridge, Wilkinson pickups. So yeah, all of the Wilkinson parts on here, which are quite nice stuff. And we've got our medium jumbo frets, rosewood fingerboard, pearloid, acrylic inlays, and then we've got a new bone nut and some nice mother of pearl inlay on the headstock there. So let's go ahead and take this thing apart and see what it looks like. Alright, here's a look at our bridge. So it's kind of like a ABR1 style bridge. It's got the little wire to keep the saddles in place. And it's a gold bridge, and the bottom says Sung Il with the model number Korea. So yeah, these are Korean parts, which is probably the same factory where the Wilkinson stuff comes from, because the Wilkinson stuff is Korean as well. And then here's a look at our tailpiece. It's full weight. It's got that casting line in the back, a lot like a Gibson style. And then here's a look at our pickups. These are Wilkinson pickups. And yeah, they just kind of look like normal Korean style pickups. Just they have those plastic covering on the wire and gold on the back, and yeah, not much else to say about them, but if they're like other Wilkinson stuff, they probably will sound pretty good. And then we can see our cavities here. So these models just have a thin veneer maple top. It's probably one way they're keeping the costs down, but yeah, you can just see there's just a very small thin veneer for the top. And then our routs look really nice and clean. We've got shielding paint in there, which is great. And over here in the neck cavity, it's fully shielded again, but we can see that there's actually a long neck tenon in there, so that's great. A long neck tenon is a little bit more expensive because you actually need physically more wood to do it, but it does provide a little bit, some people think, a better neck join and more resonance and sustain because of it. So that's nice to see. A lot of Gibson USAs only have the short neck tenon, and then a lot of the custom shops have the long neck. Alright, here's a look at the back cavity. So yeah, looks like they're using mini pots, 500K, and there's our little capacitor there. But yeah, these look like Korean parts to me, which would make sense with the rest of the guitar. And there's a look at our three-way toggle switch. Again, that looks like an import Korean three-way switch. But the routes look nice and clean, and both cavities are fully shielded as well. There's no weight relief in these guitars. They're just solid wood with no chambering or anything like that. So weighing it at just over 9 pounds, so that's still a pretty nice weight considering. Alright, ran into a bit of an issue on this guitar. So when I tried it out initially when I bought it, everything was working. But now when I tried to get a reading on the pickups, I'm getting nothing. So I'm hooked up with my ohm reader here, my multimeter, and I'm plugged into the output jack, but there's just nothing reading at all. So what I like to do at this point is to try to diagnose the problem. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to check every little solder point on each potentiometer. So what I'm looking for is I want to see if there's any spots that maybe have no contact, like the solder point is broken and there's a loose wire hanging off somewhere. I also want to check to see if any of the ports on the potentiometer are touching each other, because sometimes that can lead to like a grounding issue where they're touching each other. So I'm just checking every single point just to make sure everything is separated from each other and not touching. Make sure there's no wires that have come off or loose. And I'm going to check each pot for that. So I've already done that and I can't find an issue at all. Then I'm going to go up to my three-way switch to see if there's any issues there. And I've checked this and there doesn't seem to be any issues. This part came off when I yanked on it. So I thought that might have been a weak solder point there, so I resoldered it, but that is not the issue. So at this point, what I usually do is I'm going to test the pickups individually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the individual wires from each pickup and test those just to make sure that there is, you know, a reading coming through. It's unlikely that both pickups would be not functioning. So if I use the switch here, in any position I'm getting nothing. So it's pretty unlikely that both pickups failed. It's more likely that there's just a weird wiring issue somewhere. So I'm going to go ahead and test each individual pickup just to make sure, and then the next step I'm going to do is probably replace this output jack, because it's a cheaper one and sometimes these just fail. Alright, I've hooked my alligator clips up to the pickup, so I'm seeing that the pickup is reading. So there's a 13.43 on the bridge, so the pickups are good. I'm just going to go ahead and check the other one. Okay, so the other pickup is reading as well, a 7.10, so that tells me that the issue is in a bad pot somewhere, or probably the output jack. So I'm going to go ahead, first off, I'm going to replace the output jack. And then if that doesn't work, I can move backwards and just maybe replace these pots with full-size pots, since that would be an upgrade anyway. But we'll start with the output jack. It's very easy to replace an output jack. Just get your part, and it's just two little solder points. So one solder point goes to the hot. The hot goes on the side here. It's not connected to this metal part in the middle. The metal part in the middle, which connects right to the shaft of the cord once it's plugged in, is your ground. So hot, ground. So that's it, pretty quick and easy, and let's just see if we get a reading now. And we don't. Okay. Alright, so I've identified the actual problem. So there's nothing wrong with this guitar, or parts or otherwise. What happened was, when I had the pickups off earlier, I was trying to scratch through the side of the shielding with a razor blade to see how thick that veneer was on the top. And what I accidentally did is I severed this wire, this gray wire that goes to the switch. So this is a pretty important wire because this is actually what goes to our output jack. So what I ended up doing was just totally blocking the signal to the output jack. So all of that was unnecessary. Didn't need to replace the switch or the output jack. It was actually this cord right here that got severed. So I'm just going to go ahead and strip this, resolder it, put everything back together the way it was, and hopefully that fixes it. So I'm just splicing that wire back together. So I took off the covering, and I'm going to put ground on ground and hot on hot, and then I'm going to just use a little bit of shrink wrap over top to cover things up nicely. Alright, I wired everything back up before I put it back together just to check, and indeed that was the problem. It was my fault. I had sliced a wire, so it was working before, and I'm the one who did the problem. Alright, so in the bridge position it's reading a 13.57. In the neck position it's reading a 7.25, and in the middle position it's reading a 4.72. Alright, just quickly confirming everything works now that it's all back together, and indeed it does. Width of the nut is a 1.66, and at the 12th it's a 2.04. First fret neck depth is a 0.81, and at the 12th a 0.88. Alright, here's a look at our neck profile. So it's a pretty standard C, and it stays pretty standard C all the way up to the 12th. And the neck is not quite as chunky as like a 50s C. This is more like a 60 C if it was a Gibson. Pretty similar. Alright, here's a look at our headstock. It's pretty pristine. So the way they get around the Gibson copyright is instead of an open book, they put one more hump in the middle, and it's kind of funny because, yeah, the Gibson headstock is just kind of like a book. It has that opening, like 2 pages opening, and then the spine in the middle, and this one has 3. So, yeah. Yeah, really nice condition. No scratches or dings anywhere. Here's our truss rod, and it's nice and responsive both ways. So that's nice. There's our new bone nut. And our fingerboard looks a little bit dry, so I'm going to go ahead and condition that. And there's a little bit of fret wear here, but I'm sure that'll buff right out in the buffer. I'm going to go ahead and buff that as well. And the rose lid looks nice, and our inlays look good. So let's see what it looks like when it's buffed and hydrated. And there's a look at our conditioned fretboard and nice polished frets. So yeah, very nice and shiny. No tooling marks in the fretboard at all. One thing I did notice is there's a tiny little impression there, and I'm not really sure what it's from. Looks like something might have fell on it or dinged it somehow, but yeah, that's been there since I bought it, so I'm not sure what that is. It doesn't affect anything, but it's there. And then in terms of condition, this thing is in really nice shape. No scratches or dings anywhere, and really nice looking top. It's a plain top, but it's got really nice wood grain on there. And then I'm just going to throw a piece of tape on there so we can look at the back without anything falling off. And then here's a look at the back. So yeah, just a nice piece of mahogany. There's actually 2 pieces here. There's one seam line that goes here, so this is a 2-piece body. But yeah, no scratches or dings anywhere. Looks really good. It has like a softer carve than most Les Pauls, so it's a little bit more rounded, which is kind of a difference, but looks good. And then there's our 1-piece neck. Again, no marks or dings anywhere. And our Wilkinson pickups and our serial number here. So I believe this one's dated to a 2010, so 2010. Alright, I managed to get a pretty nice setup on this guitar, so let's have a look here. So, using my notch straight edge, you can see that there is just a tiny little gap between the notch straight edge and the fretboard. That means the truss rod is set nice and straight. And here at the 3rd fret, when I use the 3rd fret, you can see that there's just a tiny little, the string is just resting very nicely on that 1st fret. So that means the action near the nut is very low, and it also means our nut is cut very nicely. And then on the 12th fret, our action at the low E is about a 1.5, and at the high E, it's just at about a 1. So that's just where I like to set my guitars, nice and low. Alright, as always, if you want to hear this in real time, you can adjust your playback speed to 0.25 or 25%. Alright, so nice low action and no fully fretting out anywhere. There was a little bit of buzz in these really hard to reach areas, but I'm guessing that you won't be able to hear that through an amplifier. I'm just going to confirm that. And then I can always go back and do a spot level right here if I need to. But for now it seems to be okay. So alright, let's go ahead and plug it into an amp and see how it sounds. Alright, here I am plugged into the One True King rig. That. Okay, so I'm just going to run through the tones. It's just like a Les Paul, so I'm just going to run through all the different positions of the humbuckers, and then we'll try it with a little bit of dirt, and then we'll just have fun with it. Yeah, the pickups are pretty dark sounding. Not really my favorite. I like a little bit of, a little bit more trebly pickup, especially in the bridge position. However, I like to run all these guitars totally flat on my amp, so there are ways to compensate for a guitar if it's a certain way on your amp. For example, if it's dark, you just turn up your treble, or if it's bright, you just turn up your bass. So yeah, just running flat, I find the pickups to be a little bit dark. I'm going to go ahead and put on some distortion, some overdrive. kind of more the same with distortion or overdrive. I just find them a little bit too dark for my taste. I know some people really like the dark sounding pickups, so this one might be for you if that's the case, but I prefer mine to be a little bit more trebly. All right, final thoughts on the vintage V100. Yeah, if you're looking for a Les Paul alternative that's not going to break the bank, but you're still getting super high quality, I would definitely recommend this guitar. It's got some really nice appointments. It's got that. This one in particular has a really nice plain maple top. You can get ones with flame maple top as well. This is a veneer, so it's not a full cap, but still, it looks great. And they're using some nice looking mahogany for the bodies and the necks. That's a one-piece mahogany neck. This one in particular is a two-piece mahogany body. I'm not sure if there's one-piece or three-piece, iterations. It's got a really nice rosewood fingerboard with those acrylic inlays. It's got a new bone nut. It's got nice Wilkinson parts, so Wilkinson tuners and pickups and bridge and tailpiece. It's got Korean parts, like this is mini pots, which is it's okay. I have no problem with mini pots, really. They're a little cheaper than the full-size pots, and the full-size pots tend to fail less, but mini pots are fine. They hardly ever cause an issue anyway, even if they do. And every pedal that you use is using mini pots, so even the high-end boutique pedals, mini pots. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with mini pots. Yeah, I got a really nice setup on here, so it plays super nice and low, and the fretwork was really nice. It's got binding along the neck too, so you don't have to worry about fret spread as much with the tang poking through the wood. Super smooth, plays great. The one thing I wasn't super in love with was the pickups. The pickups sound good, however they're just a little too dark for my taste. So again, you can easily compensate for that on your amplifier. Just by turning up the treble, but I like to run things flat so we can hear exactly how the guitar is voiced. So in this particular instance, it was voiced a little too dark for me, but yeah, pretty easy to swap the pickups if you want, or if you prefer that dark sound, it's there. Yeah, very nice guitar. This one is in excellent condition. There's no scrapes or dings or doinks anywhere. It's in really nice shape, and this one in particular comes with a soft shell case. If you're interested in this guitar, I'm going to have this for sale on the Reverb page. Or, just keep an eye out for one, because these are pretty nice quality. I would consider them, an Epiphone level, maybe even higher, depending on the Epiphone, for, quite a bit less money, especially with the new prices for Epiphone. So yeah, keep an eye out for one of these. They're great, and that's going to be it for today. Thanks a lot for tuning into Beckler Guitars and Repair. I'm going to have more for you really soon. Thanks a lot.